Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem, a postmortem of my Blitz game number 441. I kicked off with e4 here. My opponent played d5, the center counter defense. Also a defense I like to play myself. I take, which is the main move. And my opponent plays knight f6. I'll spend some time talking about the opening because this is a short game. So I'll talk about the opening and we'll get to that key point in the game where I make the mistake that loses it for me. And then we'll discuss that point in some detail too. So I'm keeping the chess engine off because I want to give you guys the opportunity to take a look at that position and try and analyze it for yourself because I think it's a very interesting one. But let's just talk about the opening first. This is pretty normal center counter. The main move here is queen takes. My opponent plays knight f6, the second choice, but this is also the way I play. The queen takes line, the queen comes out here. It kind of bounces around. Sometimes it goes on a path like this, and then the pawn to c6, and then the queen comes back this way. And it always seemed a bit strange to me, although it turns out to be playable. But I always like this idea of trying to recover the pawn with the knight. And now, just reflexively, I have the white pieces here. I just played the move d4, which is the main move. Let's erase the queen maneuver. And that's a fine way to play, top choice. But actually, I've been meaning to play something different, so I want to show you the idea that I want to try out. That's the idea of c4. And, this looks at first like maybe I'm trying to hold on to the pawn, but I'm not. Instead of taking the pawn here after c6 and trying to just stay a pawn up, my idea is to play the move d4. Now, just to show you what happens, if white takes this pawn, black gets a free move in development. And black really has excellent control over this d4 square. He can play the move e5. He can develop his bishop here to put pressure on the pawn, which comes to d3, develop the other bishop here. And black just really gets a great position for the pawn. So it's really an excellent gambit. I'm always happy to play that as black. So that's not my idea here. My idea here is to play the move d4. Which then would transpose into a completely different opening after black takes the pawn, which is the main move. What we've got here is the Panov-Botvinnik attack against the Caro-Kann, and it's a position I've been wanting to play some more and get some more experience with, and this would let me, this is another way to get that same position. So how this could arise from a Caro-Kann, that would be the moves e4, c6, d4, d5, and then for the Panov-Botvinnik attack, white first takes this pawn, so we get this exchange, and then plays the move c4, and then black's main response is this move knight f6. So this is a mainline position of the Panov-Botvinnik attack against the Caro-Kann. So just an interesting sidelight there. Anyway, like I said, in this game, I went down the main line here, which is d4. And I was really expecting my opponent to play knight takes d5. That's the way I play it. But he played this move, bishop b4 here, g4 rather, kicking my queen. So a very interesting way to play. And it's actually in the opening book, so we haven't left the opening book yet. Turns out that the main move here is f3 to just block that bishop and kick it back. Although that's the kind of move I wouldn't play ordinarily without knowing a little bit more about the position, just because it's weakening the king side and you don't know if there's some tactics you may be creating that are not evident on the surface. But apparently f3 is playable here, so next time that's probably what I would do. I just chose the move knight f3, trying to transpose back into positions I'm familiar with in the Scandinavian. There's one other really interesting possibility here, which I just discovered exploring this opening, so I wanted to show you. Pretty neat tactic. Bishop b5 check. And so just ignoring the threat on the queen for the moment and delivering a check to the king. And now if knight to d7 is played, blocking the check, then f3 can be played and we get back into similar lines at the f3 move previously. But you have to wonder about the move c6 here. It looks like this should be winning for black at first because he's attacking two pieces. He's attacking the queen and he's attacking the bishop, so it's like a double attack. And it turns out that d takes c6, just leaving the queen hanging, is a winning move. So, or at least it's good for white. So if black takes, this is an actual mistake that loses the game because of c7 check. And what's funny about this is that black can't play queen d7 and give the just give the queen back for a piece and try and stay even that way, because there's a mate in 1 in this position. So if you want to think about this for a second, see if you can spot the mate in 1. Okay, I'm going to give the answer away. It's pawn to c8 with either a queen or a rook delivers a checkmate. The king has no moves, and the queen is pinned. The queen can't defend, and it can't take whatever piece you put on c8. So a funny mate. So in this position, it's not good to take the queen. Knight takes c6 needs to be played, and then then once again you can play f3 or even knight e2 to block the bishop, and you're okay. You've actually won a pawn in this position. So anyway, that's an interesting way to play this. If I ever see this bishop g4 move again, I'll try that. Anyway, like I said, I didn't know this line, so I just played knight f3, and then if he were to play knight d5, knight takes d5, then we'd get into a completely normal position that I'm familiar with. He played queen takes d5, slightly rarer move, but this is kind of familiar territory for someone who plays against the Scandinavian. I just block the pin on the bishop, on the knight rather. He continues developing with knight c6. I play c3 here, shoring up the center. It turns out I could have tried knight c3, but it's always a bit risky putting that, well, not risky, it's questionable whether you want the knight in front of the c-pawn, because it is leaving this d-pawn a bit exposed. So anyway, the move c3 is not a problem here. This just gives me a solid setup, and I should be doing fine here. He castles. And now I play h3, kicking the bishop back. And he doesn't move the bishop. He plays the move queen to h5 here, and he's taking advantage of this pin. So I can't take the bishop, I'll just lose the rook in the corner. But I just castle, and now I am threatening to take the bishop. And actually, if we back up, this queen h5 move is not a good move. Actually, white is better after queen h5. He should just retreat the bishop to h5, or take on f3, do something to resolve this situation. But after this, I'm better, and castling keeps the advantage. But he plays this tricky move e5, and right here is where I make my mistake. So this is the position, if you want to pause the video here, I guess I'll give you two chances. This is, if you want to pause the video here and think about it, and then I'll talk about the position a little bit and what I was thinking, and then give you a second chance. So why don't you pause now and think about the position. See if you can come up with a plan for white. Okay, now I wanted to talk a little bit about this position without putting any moves on the board. That's how you have to analyze this when you're playing anyway. His bishop is hanging, and taking is one of the possibilities. And what I was worried about is knight takes, pawn, with the threat of checkmate here on h2. So the queen and the knight would cooperate to deliver checkmate on h2. Now I am defending with my knight, but I have to worry about the move e5, pushing the knight away. And also the move e5 is immediately a threat, pushing the knight away, because the queen and the bishop are a battery on this d2 bishop here. If the knight moves, then bishop takes bishop is a big threat. So those are my concerns. I just want to point out, before I give you that second chance to pause, that there was a kind of a flaw in my thinking. If you count the moves out, instead of just thinking in general terms like that, but you count it out move by move, there was pawn takes bishop, knight takes bishop, and then I was worried about the threat of e5 followed by queen h2 checkmate. But it's my move in that position, so I have time to deal with that threat. And so that's what you need to do, is to think ahead far enough to see if you can deal with that threat or not. So here's your second chance to think about this position some more, see if you can come up with a solution, why don't you pause the video now and see what you would play as white. Okay, there's one very interesting move that I did not really consider much at all, but it turns out that the immediate knight d2 can be played here. With it has a dual purpose. It defends the e4 square, so it's guarding against this e5 push, and it also defends the knight. So it's an interesting move that, let's see, let's go ahead and put an example variation on here. If he pushes immediately, you can even just take this pawn, because what's funny is that at the end of the sequence, this bishop is still hanging, so you can grab the bishop here. And now this knight has been distracted away from any threat of mate, and this knight is very secure on the f3 square. There's nothing that's going to chase it away. If the queen takes on g4, then knight to g5 is a dangerous move that nearly traps the queen. So white is winning in this line. So that's pretty interesting, just knight d2. I did not consider that too much because knight to d2, it blocks in this dark squared bishop. And but you can see that it's a dynamic situation. This knight is not going to stay here. It's going to be moving quickly to the e4 square. Let's see, in this position, the best move is not to push the pawn forward, but rather to exchange out. Bishop takes, and we get the queen has to move here. Get this kind of position, and the knight has also blocked this file. And the annoying thing about that pawn on e5 was I couldn't take it because the rook was pinning the pawn to my queen, and so that's another advantage. Let's see, I can play bishop takes c6 here. Okay, so that's one defense, but the principal defense is probably the move h takes. Just take that bishop now, and let's then look at this this line that I was worried about. Knight takes g4. That is the top choice here of the chess engine. Looking at this h2 square, I still can't take this pawn here. So if I had been able to take the pawn in this position, maybe I would have thought to myself, oh, this is probably okay, and I'm doing fine here. But I can't, so I need to find some other move. Once again, knight b to d2 comes to the rescue. This completely stops his idea of playing e5, because now with the knight up here I can just take that pawn off. And this is playable, although it gets a bit tricky. f5, g4, g5. He can continue to attack, but I can hold this position with best play. So anyway, that was the answer, either taking immediately or knight b d2 and then taking the bishop. Like I said, I was really concerned about this pawn, which I couldn't take, being pinned, and so I took with my knight, but I had a momentary lapse where I was forgetting that the queen and the bishop are lined up against my bishop. So after knight takes e5, it's actually game over. He just grabs here, and I can't take back. I move the queen out of the way. Then he trades off the knight. He executes this part really well. Trades off the knight, which opens up the e-file for his rook. And he grabs the rook here, and when I take back, his rook comes in here and skewers my queen and my king, or pins the queen to the king and wins the queen. So just complete devastation there, and I resigned at this point. But an interesting moment in the game, and it shows how it's important to take the time to fully understand certain positions when they're critical. Now, you hate to waste too much time, or take too much time, in a blitz game, because you do have to allow yourself enough time to finish the game. If you spend all your time on that one move, it won't help. But if you play a bad move and lose the game right there, then how much time you have left over isn't going to matter. So it's worth taking your time in those critical situations. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed this video. See you again soon. Bye.